Now we'll move on to the next session, laparoscopic cystogastrostomy by Dr. Asuri Krishna. He is assistant professor, AIMS New Delhi, and he is joint secretary of CELSI.
Uh, Dr. Madhuraka, if you can allow my screen sharing. Uh, Thank you. Hope my screen is visible to all. A very good morning to everybody, to all the chairpersons. First, I would like to thank Dr. Padma Kumar, Dr. Pai, and the entire team for giving me this opportunity. And it has been actually been a treat to watch this e-Missicon. And it has shown that even in tough times like this, such conferences are possible and can be done in such an excellent manner. So the video that I shall be presenting is laparoscopic cystogastroscopy. Before I actually go into the video, I'd just like to briefly talk about the world of necrosis. Now, with the advent of the recent Atlanta classification of pancreatitis, the fluid collections have been classified into acute fluid collection and the acute necrotic collection. The acute fluid collection then turn out to become the pseudocyst, and the acute necrotic collection then turn out to become the walled off necrosis. The basic difference between the pseudocyst and walled off necrosis is the presence of necrotic material. So, if any pancreatic collection has a necrotic material, we call it a walled off necrosis or a WON. Now, the indications for doing surgery in patients with walled-off necrosis include symptomatic walled-off necrosis, which are also causing some sort of gastric obstruction, biliary obstruction, or maybe associated with infections, splenic vein thrombosis, or pseudoaneurysm. The pre-op investigation usually require a CCT abdomen, which will tell you the location, the contents, the wall maturity, and associated any vascular complication. In order to quantify the debris, which is a very important factor in deciding the management option that you're going to use, MRI is a good option. So, as a rule of thumb, any ward of necrosis that has more than 30% necrotic debris is a very good candidate for undergoing a laparoscopic drainage procedure. Usually, a routine upper GI endoscopy is required to identify the bulge in the posterior, to document the bulge in the posterior wall of the stomach, and to rule out the presence of any varices. So the treatment option is basically drainage, and the ideal drainage option is internal drainage, which can be accomplished either by a surgical or by an endoscopic route. So over the decades, there has been a paradigm shift from external drainage to open internal drainage. So now we have the laparoscopic and the endoscopic internal drainage. Now, cystogastrostomy is the most commonly performed surgical internal drainage, and it exploits the fact that mature wall of necrosis and cysts are densely adherent to the posterior wall of the stomach. They can be performed by either intragastric, transgastric, or an extragastric route. So, in intragastric gastrostomy, the ports are directly placed into the lumen of the stomach, and a cystogastrostomy is performed after creation of the pneumoperitoneum. And in extragastric cystogastrostomy, the surgery is done through the lesser sac, where an extragastric anastomosis is performed between the stomach and the cyst cavity. But what we are going to talk about today is the transgastric cystogastrostomy, which is the most commonly performed drainage procedure. Here, a communication is created between the posterior wall of the stomach and the cyst. Now, the important requisite for doing a cystogastrostomy is you need to have a cyst which is in close relationship with the posterior wall of the stomach, and there's a good contact between the posterior wall of the stomach. And preferably on upper GI endoscopy, you should be able to see a bulge in the posterior wall of the stomach. Now, coming to the preoperative preparation, so usually these patients need to be kept NPO and the procedure is done under general anesthesia. Antibiotic prophylaxis is required because there's a possible chance that the necrotic material can get infected in the postoperative period. And usually we give one dose at the time of induction. The antibiotics are then continued for 48 hours. And further on, depending upon the clinical situation, if the patient continues to have some fever or increased TLC, the antibiotics are continued further. So this is the image of a patient showing the pseudocyst of the showing a large wall of necro. You can see the bulge in the epigastrium and around the umbilicus. Coming to the patient position, so under general anesthesia, we use the modified Lloyd-Davis position with the legs apart. The head is elevated. The surgeon stands in between the leg of the patient with the assistant standing on either side. The monitor is placed toward the head and towards the left side of the patient. A very important point to remember is that the patient has to be tightly secured to the operating table, because there's going to be a lot of elevation of the head end of the patient. And if we are not careful, the patient may actually slip off. Therefore, it is very important to ensure that the patient is properly tied to the operating table. Now, we use the standard laparoscopic instrument. A couple of instruments that are required more are we need an endo-GI stapler, preferably a 60 and if if it allows flexion, that would be good. Apart from that, we need a long 12 port, a bariatric port, which is actually used for performing the trocar cystogastrostomy. We use normally the three ports. After creating pneumoperitoneum, the camera port is placed to the periumbilical region, and we use a 10 30-degree scope. One port is placed in the right, in the mid-clavicular line at the level of the umbilicus, which is the port for introducing your endo-GI stapler. Then we have a 5 working port, which is placed on the left side in the mid-clavicular line, which is your working port. And this is actually the bariatric port, which is placed under guidance to perform the posterior cystogastrostomy. After entering into the abdominal cavity and identifying the stomach, it's very essential for us to identify the bulge. You make the anterior gastrostomy at the point of the maximum bulge of the stomach. So usually a vertical gastrostomy is made. You can either make this gastrostomy using a harmonic, as we have shown, or even a cautery is fine. Once we have done that, varus needle inserted to confirm the cyst cavity, and then we place a 12 bariatric trocar through the posterior wall of the stomach with the cyst to do the posterior cysto, to make an opening between the posterior wall of the stomach and the wall of necrosis. Once this has been done, we usually pass a Ryle's tube through this to ensure that even if this port get displaced, the opening is still can be identified. Then you'll pass the endo-GI stapler carefully so that the posterior limb goes into the cyst cavity and the anterior limb is in the stomach, and then the stapler is fired. You can use green or a blue stapler. Once this has been done, you can see that the anastomosis has been made between the posterior wall of the stomach and the cyst cavity. You can go inside the cyst cavity. You can see all the necrotic debris which is seen, and you can do a thorough lavage and gentle necrosectomy. It's very essential you don't try to pull these necrotic material. Try to give a thorough lavage and gently tease them off with instrument, because there's chances that if you try to do it a little more harder, it might actually result in bleeding. And also the splenic vein, the splenic artery, and all the important vascular structures are in very close proximity to these structure. So you have to do a very gentle necrosectomy, thorough lavage, to ensure that all these necrotic material can be taken off. Now, this is the most important advantage of this laparoscopic cystogastrostomy when you compare to endoscopic cystogastrostomy, because it gives you such a wide view, such a wide drainage, and you can perform a very good necrosectomy simultaneously. The other advantage of performing a laparoscopic cystogastrostomy, especially in case of biliary pancreatitis, where one has the opportunity to do a laparoscopic cholecystectomy in the same sitting. So after doing a thorough saline lavage inside the cavity and ensuring the hemostasis, then the stomach then can be closed by doing a intracorporeal suturing. We usually do a 2-layer closure of the anterior gastrostomy. So we take a first full thickness bites, which is always continuous, followed by seromuscular bite using cell suture. So once you have completed the entire suturing, you do a thorough saline lavage to ensure that there is no other collections left in the pelvis, in the subhepatic region, and then we place a drain close to the closure of the gastrostomy site. So this is how the patient looks in the follow-up after 1 month. You can see there are the ports are hardly visible, and there is no residual cyst. Just to conclude, I would like to say that laparoscopic cystogastrostomy is a safe and feasible procedure with excellent outcome, and it's a procedure that can easily be learned. It has a fast recovery, short hospital stay, and it is a preferred approach, especially when you have significant debris and associated gallstones. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Asa Krishna. It was a wonderful presentation. Over to the chairpersons. Anybody want to ask any questions?
Good morning, Madhukar. I'm Dr. John.
Yeah,
have a
good morning,
question.
sir. John, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. John, please.
Why doesn't food enter the cystogastrostomy sac?
Oh, that is still
After surgery.
that is still a question that not many people have been able to answer. What I think that usually you have something called the Stearns star, where the food and the liquid tend to preferably flow along the lesser curvature and the greater curvature. And because we are making this anastomosis with the body in the posterior wall, so that's why the probability of food entering into the cavity is less.
No, the stomach is a high pressure system, isn't it?
Sorry.
Stomach is a high pressure system.
Yes.
So food is supposed to go from the stomach to the cyst, isn't it?
Yeah, it can go, but it never goes.
Yeah, why?
I don't know. Even I've tried to find out, but the physiological answer that I got through say some of the physiological textbook is the because the food always prefers to flow through the lesser curvature along the greater curvature rather than going through the body.
It is also it is also told that it is called Pascal's principle is there.
How do you know that the cyst is mature enough?
Okay, so usually we do a CT scan pre-operatively. So usually we operate patients with Waldorf necrosis only after 6 weeks. So usually it takes about 6 weeks for the cyst to mature. You have to look at the thickness of the wall. So generally any wall thickness more than 5 mm or 6 mm shows it's a matured cyst. And if it has got good contact with the stomach and endoscopy is showing a bulge in the posterior wall of the stomach, that is a good enough indication that your cyst is matured.
One other thing that they say is the alpha amylase level.
Yeah.
Alpha amylase level, when it is increasing, that shows that the cyst is mature.
Yeah, that may be yes. That may also be indirect evidence of a matured cyst. But usually we take radiological parameters and the duration from the onset of acute pancreatitis as the markers of maturity of the cyst.
Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you very much.
Suri, Dr. Krishna, it was really very good presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much.
Good
Thank you very
morning.
much, sir.
Really enjoyed in every way. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Azuri, after your presentation, I think it seems to be a very simple procedure, but it's not.
It is no, if you have got good experience with basic laparoscopic surgery, it is a simple procedure, especially if you don't get adhesions inside. See, the thing is, if you see few of these procedures, you can actually practice. You can actually do it. You need some amount of intracorporeal suturing practice for this procedure. But yes, if a complication happens, you can actually get stuck. But if you are very meticulous and you follow the steps properly, you can actually avoid a lot of complications, and this can easily be performed by a general surgeon.
Asuri,
Okay, thank you.
Asuri, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. So please, Agarwal, sir, please. Good morning, sir.
Have you encountered any kind of bleeding while doing laparoscopy?
Yes, sir. There have been situations.
How do you manage?
So usually, sometimes bleeding occurs from the anastomotic from the side, from the stapler sides. So usually we take intracorporeal bites to close this. One case we had where there was inadvertent puncture into the splenic vein because actually the cyst was more was smaller in size, and the port, and it got sudden decompression. The port actually went and had a rent into the splenic vein where we had to convert into open, but we were able to control the bleeding and the patient made an uneventful recovery after that. But yes, bleeding is definitely a complication that can occur, and most commonly it occurs through the sutures to the stapler site. Another site for is when you're doing debridement of the necrotic material, then they can be oozing from the pancreatic surface.
Yeah.
So one way of preventing it is you don't be too aggressive in your necrosectomy because it's a wide drainage. So you don't make an attempt to try and remove the entire necrotic material. So usually, because you have created such a wide drainage, this it will be adequate, and this necrotic material will be taken care of. You just try and remove as much as possible that comes off gently with good suctioning and irrigation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Asuri.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhuka. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let us move on to Dr. Chowte's techniques, hemorrhoidectopexy. For
Sure,
that,
please.
I invite Dr. Laduka. He is a general surgeon practicing in Laduka Hospital, Maharashtra, and he is also secretary of ISCP, over to you, sir.
Hello. Hello. Good morning. I'm Dr. Ladukar. Good morning to everybody. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
The hemorrhoids are a mass of vascular arteries and veins called as corpora cavernosa recti, which prolapses due to lax connective tissue. The recurrence of hemorrhoids is due to formation of collaterals, increased anal tone, and repetitive history of constipation. But all those procedures are having some of the disadvantages, that is recurrence of hemorrhoids, increased pain for 7 to 10 days, and they are not cost effective and having post-operative multiple complications. The hemorrhoids are treated accordingly. Grade 1 to grade 2 are conservative management, and grade 3 to grade 4 are by hemorrhoidectomy, then staple hemorrhoidectomy called as MIPH, DGHL with RAR. The transanal suture rectopexy is based on the principle of reduction or decompression of the pile mass, vascular block by stitch at 2 levels of anal canal, creation of bare area avoiding collateral formation of vessels, and fixation of reduced prolapse. Hello. This is minimally invasive procedure for hemorrhoids called as transanal suture hemorrhoidectomy. The patient is in lithotomy position with grade 3 hemorrhoids. The first step is to reduce or decompress the pile mass with manual dilatation and compression. The specially designed proctoscope made up of polycarbonate is inserted inside. It is with the light source. Now, the specially designed polygalactin polygalactin material with 5/8 circle needle is used for this procedure. First suture is taken at 3 o'clock position. The needle passes through mucosa, submucosa and muscularis mucosa, and it is at 4 cm from the dentate line. The sutures are overriding and interlocking and having no bursting effect. The procedure is carried out at 4 cm at 2 cm proximal to the dentate line, making it painless. The first suture is at 3 o'clock position and it is taken circumferentially. The another suture which we will be taking, that is at 2 o'clock at 2 cm from the dentate line. The two suture lines are created, or these two suture lines creates the bare area which avoids the formation of the collaterals. Now we are at right lateral position. Based on the principle that whenever the vessels are ligated at one level, it gives rise to collateral. But when ligated or blocked at 2 levels, there is no formation of collateral. The area between the two suture lines does not become ischemic and necrotic because of the transmural anastomotic network of vessels coming from the deeper layer. The ligation of vessels and fixation of the prolapse mucosa is the important thing which we are carrying out. The ligation and fixation leads to the inflammation and fibrosis, which eventually stops the recurrence of the hemorrhoids. The interlocking sutures are beyond the 3.8 cm of proctoscope and once taken do not cause bursting effect and not result into anal stenosis. Now the first suture line, now we are at the compression level. It is now this suture line is completed. Now we again reintroduce the proctoscope and the second suture line is taken 2 cm beyond the dentate line. We start the same procedure is repeated and all these sutures, interlocking sutures are taken circumferentially. So whatever the prolapsed mucosa was there, it is fixed to the muscularis mucosa. This procedure is painless, prevents the recurrence, and there is no bleeding at all. This is a very cost-effective procedure in Indian scenario. Almost more than 1,500 cases have been done at my center, and around 50 centers in India are performing this procedure. And multi-centric study shows common result. Now the second Switzerland is also completed. Now whenever we will be removing the proctoscope, you can see what is the post-operative effect on the table. You see how it looks post-operative. Okay.
Hello. Are you getting me?
I think I have a question. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
To me, the procedure was exactly not clear. Do I presume that this was a circumferential incision starting from 3 o'clock? Starting from 3 o'clock, you go 4 centimeter above the dentate line, and circumferentially you come back to 3 o'clock again.
Yes. Yes.
Is it?
But yes, it is that. But you are taking you are starting you are taking from mucosa.
The voice is not clear. Your voice is not clear.
So you are taking these sutures from mucosa to muscularis mucosa. So whatever the collapsing mucosa is there, that is sutured and it is fixed the deeper structure like that. So the muscle collapse requires process. And secondly, you are taking all the blood vessels are collateral formation. Because the suture lines are at